I'm Graham Cates, coming to you from New York, where I've been reporting on something that doesn't occur very often.
Yep, there he is, Wanda.
A former president of the United States taking the stand in a civil trial against him.
Thank you very much. This is a continuation of the single greatest witch hunt of all time. We have a rogue judge who rules that properties are worth a tiny fraction, 1/100th, a tiny fraction of what they actually are. It's a scam, it's a sham. Just so you know, my financial statements are phenomenal. They are actually less in terms of the numbers used than the actual net worth. The actual net worth is substantially more. No bank was affected, no bank was hurt. They don't even know why they have to be involved. And they've so testified. They can't believe that they're involved because they were paid back on time, there were no defaults, there were no problems, and it was like a perfect client. In the meantime, people are being murdered all over the sidewalks of New York. There was no victim here. The banks were represented by the best, biggest, most prestigious law firms in the state of New York, actually in the country.
Trump's 3 children will also testify by the time the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, rests her case for the prosecution.
Good morning, everyone. Donald Trump and the other defendants have committed persistent and repeated fraud. Last week, we proved that in our motion for summary judgment. Today, we will prove our other claims. My message is simple. No matter how powerful you are, no matter how much money you think you may have, no one is above the law. And it is my responsibility and my duty and my job to enforce it. The law is both powerful and fragile. And today in court, we will prove our case. I thank you all for being here. And again, justice will prevail. Thank you.
James's lawsuit accuses the Trump Organization, former President Trump, his sons Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump, and other company executives. They are accused of perpetrating years of fraud, vastly overrepresenting Trump's wealth and the values of properties on financial statements. We saw Trump speak outside of court before his first day of trial. But this is a very rare historic moment allowed on camera, a view inside the court. Trump, seated with the defense, and presiding judge Arthur Engoron. Now it's been a month since this trial got underway, with deep examination of financial statements and electronic evidence collected by the state of New York. But after the numbers spoke, so did key witnesses in the case. And before any Trump took the stand, first came Michael Cohen, Trump's former lawyer. Cohen is cooperating in the case and is testifying against Trump, who had been absent since the first week of trial, but returned to face his former fixer for the first time in years.
Let me just turn around and say that this is not about Donald Trump versus Michael Cohen or Michael Cohen versus Donald Trump. This is about accountability, plain and simple, and we leave it up to Judge Engoron in order to make all the determinations on that. So I thank you all for coming.
Mr. President, what do you think about Michael Cohen testifying today? Do you think it's about this loyalty?
Well, he's a proven liar, as you know. So a felon, served a lot of time for lying, and we're going to just go in and see. And I think you'll see that for yourself very easily. The Southern District came out with a scathing statement about him. So he's a liar, trying to get a better deal for himself, but it's not going to work. This case, by any other judge, this case would have been over a long time ago. We did nothing wrong, and that's been proven. Thank you.
I should mention, this was a big day in court for Trump in New York, but it was not the only headline in his legal journey. In Georgia, that same day, another former Trump ally pleaded guilty in the election interference case brought by Fulton County against her, Trump, and others. Listen to how all these events played out by the time Chief Election and Campaign Correspondent Robert Costa reported on it for the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell.
I look back on this whole experience with deep remorse.
In a tearful turnaround, former Trump campaign lawyer Jenna Ellis admitted to making false statements that the 2020 presidential election was fraudulent.
If I knew then what I know now, I would have declined to represent Donald Trump in these post-election challenges.
Ellis became the third attorney associated with Trump to accept a plea deal and could testify against him in the future. She blamed Rudy Giuliani and others for pulling her into a conspiracy.
What I did not do, but should have done, Your Honor, was to make sure that the facts the other lawyers alleged to be true were in fact true.
Meanwhile, Trump was part of a dramatic standoff today in a New York courtroom as Michael Cohen, his former fixer, sat across from him and accused Trump of fraud.
How does it feel to see Donald Trump again? Heck of a reunion.
Cohen said Trump directed him to balloon his net worth and inflate the value of his properties, including Trump Park Avenue and Trump World Tower, testifying that he was tasked by Mr. Trump to increase the total assets based upon a number that he arbitrarily selected. Trump shook his head in response without looking at Cohen. Cohen also implicated Trump's children, including Ivanka, for being involved in creating false financial statements. The former president's legal team has repeatedly attacked Cohen's credibility. He served 13 months in jail for crimes including lying to Congress.
He's a proven liar, as you know, he's a felon.
For Trump and Cohen, this was their first in-person confrontation in 5 years. And as Trump watched his former fixer testify, he sometimes folded his arms across his chest and shook his head in disgust. Robert Costa, CBS News, New York.
So it's time for Trump to take the stand. He is the third of his family to do so. Donald Trump Jr. was the first.
You know what? I think it went really well if we were actually dealing with logic and reason the way business is conducted. But unfortunately, the Attorney General has brought forth a case that is purely a political persecution. The banks in question made hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, think about this, right? They are not claiming that they are victims. They are not saying that they were misled. They are saying that they did their own due diligence. But that doesn't matter because I guess in the attempt to get Trump, the Attorney General can go and try to, I guess, make more millions for the biggest banking institutions in the world who have already made millions. I mean, I think it's a truly scary precedent for New York. For me, for example, before even having a day in court, I'm apparently guilty of fraud for relying on my accountants to do, wait for it, accounting. I mean, think about that. What does that do for literally any other business?
Then came Eric Trump.
Eric, any statement about your testimony?
What New York State's trying to do to my father is truly awful. I've never seen anything like it. We have an unbelievable company. We have some of the best assets anywhere in the world. We've never had a default. We've never missed a loan payment. We have thousands of employees, literally thousands of employees that rely on our company every single day to put food in their mouths in the state of New York. We run some of the most significant buildings, some of the best golf courses, so many other great properties. And the witch hunt that this woman is under, the witch hunt that this person is under to get my father for political purposes is disgusting. They've dragged Don and I and Ivanka into it as collateral damage. They only want our names in this thing because it sensationalizes the case. We've done absolutely nothing wrong. We have a better company than they could have ever imagined.
Former President Trump's two adult sons took the stand in his civil fraud trial today. Both Eric and Don Jr. are facing questions on their involvement in the family business. The Trump Organization and family members are accused of falsely inflating the value of its assets. CBS News investigative reporter Graham Cates joins us now. Graham, Eric Trump took the witness stand today after Don Jr. Did his testimony differ at all from his brother's?
They were very similar. They both kind of said that they had very little to do with the financial statements at the center of this investigation. These are these documents called Statements of Financial Conditions that were given to banks and insurers that purported to show Donald Trump's wealth and the value of his assets, and that the Attorney General has said, and a judge has ruled, drastically inflated both his wealth and their assets. And both brothers said, essentially, we didn't have very much to do with those documents. Eric has said, I was basically unfamiliar with the document. And then he was shown a series of emails where it appeared like he was involved at least a little bit with some of his projects in helping to provide some of the data for those documents. But Eric really parsed words. If an email said, I'm coming to you for your father's annual financial statement, Eric responded, that says annual financial statement. You're asking me about a statement of financial conditions. How do I know that's the same thing? And they went back and forth over this really for the better part of an hour.
Wow. As you know, Ivanka and Donald Trump are scheduled to testify next week. What is the prosecution hoping to glean from them?
So on Ivanka's part, just like with her brothers, they're kind of building this foundation that the three adult siblings of Trump were involved in creating these documents for Donald Trump, that they were all part of what the Attorney General claims is a decade-long scheme that benefited them and the company to $250 million. And for Donald Trump, they've portrayed him as kind of the key stakeholder in this whole thing. Everyone answered to Donald Trump at the company. At this point, not only have the kids said, yeah, we answer just to him, but also several other executives have said, ultimately, you came and you got everything approved through Donald Trump himself. And so now we're going to hear whether Donald Trump had insight himself into how the statements of financial conditions were made and what he says to the allegations that he did.
And we know the Attorney General wants $250 million in damages and to bar the Trump Organization and members of the family from doing business in New York. What happens if the case loses in court? Is the lawsuit still damaging to their organization?
Well, in some ways, the case has already been won. Before the trial even started, the judge found in a pretrial ruling that the Trumps and their company were liable for fraud, and he found it to be significant fraud to the tune of, in the form of Trump, billions of dollars of overstating his wealth, and for the properties that they were inflated by hundreds of millions of dollars. So at this point, what we're deciding is a couple of other allegations related to insurance fraud, related to conspiracy, and just how much the damage will be, how bad the penalties will be. The state is asking for them to essentially lose the ability to, at least in the short term, do much business in New York at all. And that's what we're waiting for the judge to hear, to decide on. I apologize.
All right, Graham Cates, thank you so much.